This is Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 with a special edition of the podcast. LSU has just won the College World Series by beating Florida by a 16-4 score one day after Florida just annihilated LSU. The Tigers turned the table, win their seventh national title. So congratulations to Jay Johnson and really to Paul Mainieri too. He put together part of this team, recruited Cruz and Tre Morgan and several other key guys. He was in the crowd tonight. They showed him several times on the broadcast, so I'm happy for Paul Mainieri that he gets to be part of this too. All right, a lot to unpack here. We'll talk about the game in a little bit. We'll talk about LSU and the season it had and some reflections I have on that because it was a phenomenal and remarkable season. But first, a little about Florida. Congratulations to the Gators on an outstanding season. I thought Florida would win the College World Series before the tournament started. They were my pick the whole time. Maybe weren't my preseason pick. That would have been LSU. But I thought that Florida had just a little bit more than what it took in terms of pitching. But, boy, that fell apart at the end. Jack Caglione, he's been up and down. And Monday night, it was the down version that Florida got, and that was one of the differences in the game. But enough about Florida on Monday night. Let's talk about the season and the future. What a tremendous career it was for Wyatt Langford, Josh Rivera, B.T. Riopel, Brandon Sproat had a nice career. Hurston Waldrop, transferred from Southern Miss, had a really nice year, helped get the Gators here. So a phenomenal baseball team that won the SEC Eastern Division. Just a tremendous year for the Gators. Kevin O'Sullivan has had his program at such an elite level for so long. And the Gators should be good again next year. Jack Caglione, I think, will be the near unanimous, if not unanimous, preseason player of the year next year as the two-way guy. Cade Curlin had an outstanding freshman year. He'll be back. Michael Robertson showed some things as a freshman. So did Luke Heyman. Derek Fabian will be a junior. He's shown some things, should move into playing time. Ty Evans came on really late. I think he hit 4 home runs all season, and then I think he broke the College World Series home run record in this event, if I'm not mistaken, with just a breakout tournament. He'll be back. They'll get Neely and Fisher back and Abner. So, and I think Pierce Coppola will be back too. So the Gators should have a fine team again next year and be poised to be right back in this event. All right, now on to LSU. Just some thoughts on the Tigers season. First of all, hats off to Jay Johnson. Their coach did a tremendous job. Made just one right move after another in the postseason. Seemed like everything he did turned to gold for the most part, except for that one exception of that ugly Sunday game. We'll get to that in a minute because I think that wound up being a good thing for LSU. But let's rewind this season a little bit. LSU was preseason number 1. There was probably more pressure on LSU than any program in the country. So to start the season with that kind of target on your back, that's tough. I don't care how good you are. And my goodness, this team was good. This was one of the most talented college baseball teams ever fielded. But you go back and look at LSU's season, and some stuff started happening before the season. Grant Taylor, who was, according to some, maybe the most effective pitcher or one of the most effective pitchers, maybe to Paul Skenes. I wasn't there for that, so you'd have to ask somebody else. But reports on Grant Taylor were tremendous. He was going to be in that weekend rotation, got hurt, and never threw a pitch. So that was one thing against the Tigers before the season started. Then, and this was a team that, remember, had struggles with pitching and bullpen depth at times. LSU lost Garrett Edwards, who I thought was probably their best reliever, and Chase Shores, who was a freshman stud. Those guys weren't available, man, at least half the season, maybe more like 2/3. I'd have to go back and look it up. So that took a toll for a while. For a while, it was all LSU had was Paul Skenes, and then Floyd was pretty good at times. Not Skenes, and some weekends he would struggle, but really it was after those two guys. You didn't always know what you were going to get. Now, at the end, that changed dramatically. But at one point, things took a little bit of a bleak turn. You remember LSU lost that home series to Mississippi State. I want to say it blew something like an 8 or a 10-run lead in a Sunday game to the team that wound up finishing last place overall in the SEC. So let's not forget that. LSU overcame a lot to get here. It took a while, but at the end, they found just enough pitching and, the guys that really helped out. Obviously, Paul Skenes, and I'll get to him in a minute. but you had Nate Ackenhausen really came up big for most of the postseason. Gavin Guidry came up big most of the postseason. Griffin Herring, Riley Cooper in particular, just was a money closer, not a dominant dude, but a guy who got a lot of big outs and could throw bulk innings. And those are big things in the postseason that he gave them. So those were some things I think that just kind of set the table. And you go back and you look. And by the way, the future for LSU, before we get into some more things about this tournament, things are looking good. This is just year 2 for Jay Johnson. He's won a national title in his second year. Their NIL program is really strong, maybe the strongest in the country. So this program, not that you would expect LSU to go away, but certainly under these current circumstances, LSU going to be a factor for a long, long, long time. All right, back to the tournament. I think that maybe the best thing that could have happened for LSU was getting blown out on Sunday. This is what I mean by that. Let's say this is a 6-6 game in the 5th inning. What does LSU do at that point? Do they go Griffin Herring? Do they go Gavin? Well, I guess Guidry did go on Sunday. Do they go, though? I mean, would they have brought Riley Cooper back on a bunch of pitches? Would they have gone to Thatcher Hurd in particular in that situation? No, they didn't, because that game was over quickly. So they went Bryce Collins, Blake Money, Christian Little, Sam Dutton, guys that, with the exception maybe of Money, I would not have expected to be throwing in a national title on the line on a Monday night situation. So now Florida benefited from that too. He got to throw Blake Purnell and Nick Ficarata. But my point I'm making is here, had this been a close game, on Sunday, LSU might have made some different pitching decisions and had some different availability for Monday. Instead, what happened is what I said. So they got to throw Thatcher Hurd, which ended up being big. And on Thatcher Hurd, let's rewind his season for a bit, because it was rough at times. He transferred from UCLA. A lot was expected. I think he was everybody's pick for their other weekend guy, one of their weekend guys in there. And then it just didn't go so well. He got sent to the bullpen. He couldn't get out. And I remember watching, they played Georgia on either a Thursday or Friday night. It was the opening game of the series. And they're down there playing in Athens where the ball can get out pretty quickly. And he gives up 2 big home runs, I think, to start the 9th inning. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on the innings, but I remember watching the game. It was a big situation, and LSU's got a lead, and Hurd blows it just like that. And you're thinking, oh, boy, here it goes again. Thatcher Hurd bore down, and I think pitched 4 more scoreless innings from that point on to get a win. And Hurd had some outings, 1 or 2 from there on, that were difficult at times, rough, but that happens to any pitcher. Paul Skenes got hit for an inning or 2 at a time. But the point I'm making here is Thatcher Hurd was a different pitcher from that Georgia outing going forward. He found some confidence. He's got big league stuff. You saw that on Monday night. And I think that was really, if you go back and look at it, and knowing what we know now about the way this season ended, I think that game that Thatcher Hurd threw in Athens on that, I think it was a series opener, back whenever they played, might have been the key moment of LSU season, because that set things up for tonight when he had his confidence. He pitches on the biggest of stages that he'll pitch on until he pitches in the majors, which I think he'll probably do someday. And boy, he came up big at a spot where LSU really needed it. Some other thoughts. You can't talk about LSU without mentioning Dylan Cruz, and I've gone about 9 minutes without it so far. I followed SEC baseball and covered it for about 20 years. And I think Dylan Cruz, in fact, if it's not Dylan Cruz, I don't know who it would be. But I think his 3-year career is the best that I've seen of any SEC player in that time. Now, some guys might have had a better season here or there than Dylan Cruz did, although he just won the Golden Spikes Award, so maybe not. But point is, it's not just this one season. It's the balance of his career. That kid has been a stud ever since he set foot on campus. He has been a guy who's a tough out at the plate, does not chase. He's not the most premium power hitters these days. He's not going to challenge Caglione or Langford or some of those guys for the national home run lead, and he didn't this year. But you remember, he hit 500, I don't know, half the season or more. I think he walked more than he struck out this year, and I think that was the case for his career too. and just a really good center fielder. He's not a guy that's going to steal 30 bases in the season, but the speed grade has been good. You saw that on display on Omaha. He just made so many really nice plays where he made it look more or less routine. You saw him on Monday night take home on a double, hit down third, hit off the wall. They sent him the whole way, and Cruz was just flying around third and scored pretty easily. I just think that you saw the best of Dylan Cruz in this event from everything. He is, I don't know, maybe the most complete ball player that I've ever seen in the SEC. Now, is he the best SEC player ever? I don't know. I wasn't around for Frank Thomas or Dave Magadan. Those were different eras. I didn't see those guys. Maybe people that did can weigh in. Certainly Frank Thomas is an MLB Hall of Famer, so I think he gets some benefit of the doubt there, even though he went to Auburn, I think, on a football scholarship. Magadan hit 525 one year when he was at Alabama. But those were different eras. The bats, I was going to say, are hotter, and the balls, maybe not, since we saw records for home runs and runs scored. But it was a different era. I don't think college baseball was as hyper-competitive, and especially in the SEC as it is now. So is Dylan Cruz the greatest SEC player of all time? I don't know. Might be. Again, you'd have to defer to people who go back further than I do. But I can say definitively in the 20 years that I've followed the SEC, and I've watched God knows how much SEC for 20 years. I've seen a lot. Dylan Cruz, for my money, is best player I've ever seen in the league. Paul Skenes. Let's talk about Paul Skenes for a minute. Paul Skenes was only at LSU 1 year after transferring from Air Force. I've seen some great ones in this league. I've seen Aaron Nola, David Price, Carson Fulmer, Chase Dolander, any number of names you can name. And I know I'm leaving out some great ones. Michael Roth, different kind of pitcher, but dominant in his own way. Paul Skenes, I think, was the most dominant single-season pitcher I've ever seen in the SEC. When you're throwing 102 and you've got a couple of secondary pitches that are premium, and you saw him some nights. I remember a particular night, I think, against Tennessee, where all of them were working, and you're just watching, you're going, God help those guys, because they're not going to hit it. I don't know if major league hitters would hit Paul Skenes the way that he has thrown it sometimes. Was kind of glad to see that LSU didn't have to use him on Monday night because he threw a lot of pitches in this event. I'm very interested to see where Skenes gets picked. It's got to be in the top 5. If it's me, I might take him 1 overall. With apologies to Dylan Cruz. It's one of those two guys. I'm taking Langford or Cruz, or excuse me, Langford would probably be my 3rd guy. But if you want to take Skenes, boy, if you're a Pirates fan, I'd have no problem with that. And I wonder how quickly he can reach the majors because, frankly, at this point, I don't know what he's lacking. His control was outstanding. His strikeout to walk ratio was, I don't know, 11, 12 to 1, wherever it wound up being. I don't know how long Paul Skenes needs to spend in the minors, but in my opinion, it's not a lot, if any at all. So looking forward to seeing Paul Skenes at the next level, and can't wait for that to see how he fares against major league hitters. All right, one last thought on LSU. Prayers to Alex Milazzo, their catcher, who's been with them a couple of years. He was rounding third and scored at home on a play where he kind of jumped into home. I don't know how else to describe it. And you could see when he landed, it didn't go well. And immediately he went down, was in the dugout on crutches. Let's hope he gets a speedy recovery. I didn't hear what the exact injury was, but that looked bad. You could tell he was in pain. You could tell his teammates were concerned. Milazzo was a kid that didn't hit a lot there, but just a defensive wizard for them. Hayden Travinski ended up taking over most of this season. But Milazzo, a guy that logged a lot of innings at LSU and really didn't come out of a lot of games last year in particular, just because his glove was that good. It was nice to see him get a moment in glory, but you hated to see it end with an injury the way it did. All right, now a few thoughts on the game tonight before we end this. All right, Jack Caglione, I thought he'd be the key to the game. And I said before the game, some nights he's got it. And lately he's had it more than he hasn't. But he was inconsistent really for the first 2/3 of the season. He started throwing well, I guess, late April, early May. And you're thinking, well, he's recovered from Tommy John surgery. Maybe this is the Jack Caglione we're going to see the rest of the way. And for the most part, it was. But bad Jack Caglione started showing up again. You saw that the first at bat tonight when he hit Cade Beloso with the first pitch. he just didn't have it. It unwound on them quickly, and LSU got, 6 runs in the first 2 innings, and was kind of off to the races there. Another guy's big night, Jordan Thompson, had a big hit early in the game. I think I don't remember if it was 2 outs or not. He did have a 2-out hit later in the game that made it 9-2. Jordan Thompson had a brutal College World Series for the most part. Struck out a ton, committed some pretty uncharacteristic, I'd say, errors in the field for him. He was really wearing it and feeling it, I'm sure, coming into Monday night. So good for Jordan Thompson to get it right and have a big game, including a couple of big hits. I think the biggest one tonight, there were a lot of big hits. LSU had, 24, 25 hits. I think that broke a record. And I'm doing this right after the game, so I don't have the box score with me. But he hit the home run that made it 9-2, and probably at that point put the game away. Look, a 3 or 4 run lead, the way Florida can hit the ball, you don't feel great about that after every inning. I thought when Pearson hit that home run to make it 9-2, that might have done it. And let's rewind his season a little bit, because when he hit late in the year, that allowed LSU to move Tre Morgan from left field back to first, where he made a couple of big defensive plays in this series. And remember, Pearson made that great play, maybe the play of the tournament, in the outfield, with apologies to Michael Robertson, who's got an argument too for Florida. He made that one. Oh goodness, I can't remember who they were playing. It might have been TCU, I think, to send them to the championship series. But Pearson made a play on a ball that was, I think, 111 off the bat, made a leaping grab and left that saved the game for them. And I think back to Pearson hitting late in the season, going into left field. That allowed Tre Morgan to go back to first, where he's a tremendous defender and probably a plus glove for a college first baseman. That's another dynamic in LSU season that I think played out a little bit tonight. Morgan also, of course, had a good game, but he was a fixture in that lineup for 3 years. But Pearson's being able to hit and been able to move back to Morgan to first and leave him room in left field, that paid dividends in this tournament and paid dividends again tonight with the home run that, in my mind, that might have been the moment where I said, okay, at this point, I don't think Florida's probably coming back, especially with Paul Skenes hitting the tunnel, getting in some throws, and being available just in case. LSU, of course, broke it open late, kept scoring and scoring and scoring. At that point, they said, hey, with the 10-12 run lead, we don't need him. But I think Pearson's home run might have been the one that ended up being maybe the biggest of the backbreakers. The other thing for Florida, Ryan Slater got hit with a line drive early in that game, again, when it was tilting heavily towards LSU, but still in the balance. He wasn't the same again. I think he gave up 3 or 4 hard hit singles after the one that hit him in the ankle was done after that. Again, that was another turning point in the game. But anyway, all right, we are done with the SEC baseball season. May have some draft coverage if I've got the time to do it. And boy, you're going to see a lot of guys that played in this game on Monday night go in the draft. You'll see Cruz, Skeen, Langford probably go 1, 2, or 3. Depending on pro scouts and what they think, you could see Max Clark, the stud outfielder out of Indiana, who's a Vandy commit. He could go in that range somewhere top 3 or 4. But I would guess right now, and sometimes teams play games with money and undersliding, and you see curveballs thrown every now and then. But my guess is you'd see Skeens, Cruz, Langford in some order. That depends pretty much every day on the next mock draft you see, because I'm not sure there's been a consensus for most of the season. And my goodness, you'll see a ton of guys in this game go, period. Caglianone's going to go high next year. You're going to see a lot of underclassmen. Thatcher Hurd, I think, will be a high pick one day. You'll see Hurston Waldrop go in the first round this year. Sproat will go again in the top 100 for Florida. But just I can't wait till about 3 or 4 years from now, when I guess it'd be 2 or 3 years from now, when all the drafts are done on all the players that played in this championship series, and see how many draft picks and first-round draft picks we'll have, because it's going to be a ton. All right, congratulations to Florida and LSU on outstanding baseball seasons. Congratulations to a bunch of SEC teams on outstanding seasons. Tennessee got to the College World Series, had a fine year. Arkansas and Vanderbilt had great regular seasons that ended earlier than people thought in regionals. Just it was a fantastic year for SEC baseball. We'll have you covered with that again next year. We'll have you covered with all kinds of football coverage. We're starting to roll out our football previews. We've got basketball news with the transfer portal. As that happens, we had a couple of big things this week. But anyway, when it's SEC and it's football, basketball, baseball, we will have you covered at Southeastern 14. Best way to get all that, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. That helps our analytics, and tell a friend if you don't mind. Just more exposure helps our channel, more views. All those things help us get advertisers, advertising revenue, all the things that make this possible. All right, I'm Chris Lee for Southeastern 14. Thank you for watching. Congratulations again to Jay Johnson and LSU on a national title, and we'll see you again soon.